Again, there's a reason why some old sayings have lasted for centuries and are still used to this day. Take divide and rule, for instance. The idea is that if you wish to rule over a territory, this is best accomplished if the people you want to subjugate are fighting each other rather than uniting against you, the occupying power. This is done by encouraging and promoting differences of religion, ethnicity, and nationality among those whom you would seek to rule. That way, they will be so busy squabbling with and killing each other that they will not be uniting to drive you from power. The British Empire was, of course, established by means of this strategy. Communal riots in India and tensions there between Muslims and Hindus were a godsend to the British when they assumed direct rule of India. Result: almost a century of British rule, while the Muslims and Hindus were at daggers drawn with each other. In Cyprus, the British exploited the difference between the Greek Christian majority and the Turkish Muslim minority. In Israel, of course, there were Arabs and Jews, who never achieved a common purpose of driving out the British, because hostility between the two was carefully orchestrated. In Nigeria, the British deliberately created a territory which included the Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa people, Christian and animist in the south, and Muslim in the north. So deep were the divisions between these ethnic and tribal groupings that there was no chance of their joining together to oppose the British presence. Little wonder that a few years after the British abandoned this artificial and deliberately diverse nation which they had created, a vicious civil war broke out. Don't even get me started on the way that Britain made the use of the religious divisions in Ireland there for their own ends. You see, diverse societies are inherently unstable and prone to violence at best and fragmentation at worst. This is why Cyprus is today divided in two. It's why the north of Nigeria is plagued with Islamist unrest. Something very similar is now being deliberately engineered in this country by planting and cultivating various ethnicities and religious groups, many of whom are intrinsically opposed not only to each other, but also to the host society in which they have been implanted. This mutual antagonism has had the effect of making British society less cohesive and unified, and therefore a good deal easier to control and govern. I've no idea if that is actually the intention behind mass immigration, but it's certainly the effect. What did anybody think would be the result of importing into a peaceful and largely law-abiding country millions of people belonging to different ethnic groups with different religions, languages, customs, and ways of life? Did it honestly never occur to anybody who arranged all this that it was a recipe for the erosion of a nation's values and lifestyle? I find that hard to believe. By the way, I feel I ought to add an addendum and perhaps a coda to my video yesterday about Western firearms because it's been reading through the comments and there was some fairly harsh and I felt rather unjustified criticism of what I said. A couple mentioned that I referred to percussion caps when I was talking about modern ammunition. Well, yes, of course I did, because I was firstly speaking about cap and ball pistol. I was talking about the percussion caps. If you see here, these nipples here would have percussion caps, little copper things fitted over them. And I referred to modern ammunition as having percussion caps. Well, it may be called a primer today, and it is, but it is a percussion cap. It's now an integral part of the cartridge rather than being a separate component. In a cap and ball pistol, you have the ball, which is inserted separately, then the charge, and then the percussion cap, which is a small amount of fulminate of mercury. In modern ammunition, you have the bullet here, and a brass cartridge, and a percussion cap, which we can refer to it as a primer, here. It's the same thing. It's got fulminate of mercury in. The other point is that I said that it was anachronistic to see somebody in the American Civil War, in the film The Bad and the Ugly, using modern brass ammunition in a cap and ball pistol, and somebody said that there had been conversions. Yes, of course there were. in 1872, after the American Civil War had ended, years after. That was what I was referring to. I think people have rather missed the point. The same thing with the Winchester. I mentioned that it was impossible to perform some of the tricks that John Wayne performed in True Grit with Winchester, and I was referring to the Winchester rifles available at that time. Somebody then came on and said, what about the 1892 model? Well, yes, possibly so. But True Grit was set in 1880. Using an 1892 Winchester in the film was an anachronism. That was actually the whole point of the what I was saying, but I fear it has passed some people over.